Weekends with Whitney. On today's show, we're going to Canada, to an island in Lake of the Woods. It's a journey to a life without life's modern conveniences.
It's nice and peaceful. There's no technology here. My cell phone doesn't work. Now, this is a place that's very spiritual. It's a soulful, spiritual vacation.
Plus, meet one of Canada's best hunting and fishing guides. His secrets to bringing home the big catch and the allure for Americans north of the border. Then we'll go exploring to find an eagle's nest and discover what all the things underneath that nest reveal about these majestic birds. And Dr. Nick on the power of critical thinking. But first, family vacations. They're a summertime favorite. I'm taking you to my childhood favorite, a place I hadn't been back to in more than 40 years. Here, 60 degrees is the normal summer high, but you have to travel 1,600 miles to get here. This is Shoal Lake Narrows that connects Lake of the Woods and Shoal Lake, 23 miles off the coast of Kenora in Ontario, Canada. Here, they love fishing and hunting nearly as much as folks in Louisiana. Professional guide Don Sauvé.
From lake trout to muskie to smallmouth to largemouth, crappies, everything's here.
So is the peace and quiet. And the evocative sounds of the loons, especially at night. But if you like to explore, there are thousands of islands to choose from. My favorite is my family's island, Bailiwick. My grandfather, Garnet Bale, bought it back in the 1950s, sight unseen, from a Canadian he'd just met. His son, my Uncle Bradley, says the lure of great fishing and a place to vacation with his 6 kids was all he needed.
I think they had a few photographs, and my father looked at it and said, "How much do you want for the island?" And it wasn't very much. And he said, "Well, I'll buy it." So he bought it sight unseen.
From that day forward, this was their yearly family vacation spot. It was full of excitement and adventure, but it lacked electricity, running water, or a toilet that flushed. That meant an outhouse, pumping water from the lake, and kerosene lanterns at night. Bradley and his 3 brothers were in heaven.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, we'd usually spend 4 to 6 weeks, and it was always adventures to do. We'd build rafts and make trails through the woods on the island and go fishing and, chop trees. It was fun.
For my mother, however, she was more in shock.
He just told us the summer when we were going to go on vacation that we were going on to an island in Canada, which I thought sounded very glamorous. I was so excited. And we pulled up to this, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I went to the back bluff over there, and I started crying. And he came around and he said, "Honey, what's wrong?" And I said, "Well, it's just not what I thought it would be." And he said, "It'll be fine." And it was fine. But somehow I had an island, maybe in the Pacific or an ocean. Wasn't this.
Didn't have an outhouse.
No.
She grew to love it in her own way. And for the next 10 summers, here she was. What would you do?
Oh, explore, climb trees, build forts, be scared at night. Tell ghost stories and scare the ones that were really, could really be scared and hide behind trees.
After Mom and Dad got married, he got to experience the adventures himself. Some were great, like fishing and water skiing. Others, well, like the beard he decided to grow for this year's trip when in Rome.
On one occasion up here, I helped dig, make an outhouse.
Oh.
And I'm sure that up to that point in time, I would never have known what you did to make an outhouse.
Right.
But you dig a very large hole in the ground, very deep, over and above your head if you can.
I got to come to the island for the first time when I was 5. Other than the outhouse, I thought it was paradise. There were 20 or 30 of us here that year. And they did stuff I had never seen before. Like Indian dances, greeting visitors with a full mooning on the dock, if you know what I mean. And I learned what skinny dipping was.
Everybody could run naked up here. You got a certain age, and you didn't. But when we were kids, we ran buck naked all the time up here. We couldn't do that at home. I mean, we'd run out the door naked. You know, that was wonderful. A favorite memory, nakedness. And swimming in a lake naked. I mean, if you hadn't done it, you need to try it. There's nothing better.
So why then was this year the first in more than 40 years that we've all been back here? 90% of the year, no one is on our island bailiwick, but you can be sure other wildlife is. For those first to arrive on the island in the summer, my Uncle Bradley says anything can and has happened. What do you do with the bear that won't leave? He says anything you can think of.
I know one time your father actually had a chainsaw he was carrying. I think I had an axe, and I'm not sure what Philip had, a hammer or something, and we just kind of made a line. It just kept going toward the bear to get him off the other end of the island.
Then there was the winter that 3 violent criminals on the run broke in and hid out from police here. Bradley's wife Pam says they trashed the place top to bottom.
And we found like stuff with blood on it. So somebody had been shot or stabbed or something, we never knew. There was a Molotov cocktail they'd left above the door, the main door to the cabin. So they were getting ready to like defend themselves if they got caught out here. They had used all the food and cooked in every pot and pan and left it. Didn't, of course, clean anything. So we, of course, walk in 6-7 months later, you can imagine. Ugh. Oh. It was terrible.
I have a feeling it was things like that that kept my mom from coming back for nearly 40 years. When she did come back for the first time 3 summers ago, she was welcomed back by a big black bear. She was alone swimming in the lake. Unknown to her, a bear came swimming for her.
We were all up in the cabin, and we looked out that direction, saw something swimming in the water, and it was a big black bear.
And I was going to swim over to the other island, and one of my brothers ran down and said, "Bear, bear." And I looked up, and there was a bear coming from the island across from me.
So we had to come down and yell at your mom to swim back to shore because the bear was coming right for her. So she hasn't ever swum that fast before, or, you know.
In her whole life.
Yeah. See, I didn't know she could swim that fast.
But it wasn't fast enough. The bear was gaining on her.
And then we got a boat out, you know, and kept circling the bear to finally make it turn around and go back over to the other island.
So it might have gotten her.
Oh, it could have.
I did my fastest crawl that I had. And I did more than crawl when I got to land.
There's one thing on Bailiwick you can always count on.
Yeah, there's always some adventure happening for sure.
But there's a bigger reason than bears my mom didn't come back for decades.
I discovered the ocean. I love the ocean. You all love the ocean. That became how we vacationed.
That was your island.
Yes, that was my island.
So 40 years later, she's back for the next generation. Has it been fun to see your grandchildren experience it?
Especially your son, who loves he doesn't have to catch a fish up here to be happy. He just likes being out in the wilderness. And Lily, And Sydney Joy. Oh yeah, they all want to come back.
It is a place that calls you back.
This is a place that's very spiritual. It's a soulful, spiritual vacation.
That's why I came, because I knew any of my family that came, they could know what Bellwood was.
Well, I wouldn't trade my life for diamonds or jewels. I never was one of those money-hungry fools. Rather have my fiddle and my farming tools. So thank God I'm a country boy. Life ain't nothing but a funny, funny rule. Thank God I'm a country boy. Thank God I'm a country boy. Yeah!
Stay with us when we come back, more on our Canadian journey. Meet a man who's lived almost 50 years on a remote Canadian island miles from the mainland. Find out how he does it and why. Then I'll take you to the bottom of this eagle's nest, the fascinating things on the ground that tell the story of how they live. Plus, Dr. Nick differentiates critical thinking and being critical as Weekends with Whitney continues.
No. 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 Maybe. Yes.
Low rates, no commissioned agents, lowest down payment, and we won't sell you expensive add-ons.
Go Auto is my perfect match. Greg can really save me money.
Greg really is the Go Auto guy.
Give us a call and speak to one of our non-commissioned agents. Visit our website or stop by one of our convenience stores and start saving today.
Breck Summer Camp, where your child's next big adventure awaits.
Where I explored nature. Where I splashed in the summer.
Where I scored the winning point.
Where I reached new heights. Where we beat the summer heat. Where I took a walk on the wild side. Where I used my imagination.
Breck Summer Camp registration begins March 24th. Give your child the adventure of a lifetime. So sign up today. Welcome back to Weekends with Whitney. Meet a Canadian hunting and fishing guide who's lived on a remote island more than 30 years. His secrets to bringing in the big catch and even bigger game. 70 miles of pristine water, 14,000 islands, 65,000 miles of shoreline, and millions of fish make up Lake of the Woods off the coast of Kenora in Ontario, Canada. For Don Sauvé, it was love at first sight.
I would say it started by me visiting Kenora when I was just a young guy, 16 years old, and enjoyed fishing here and found the water's really extra special as far as fishing goes, and so I moved here.
He's now one of the top guides in all of Canada with one of the best camps. Welcome to Northwest Outfitters and Outpost. It's Don's private island in the Narrows connecting Lake of the Woods and Shoal Lake.
I like to come out here, and the fishing is great, and it's nice to have your own little island. This is kind of unique, where most of the camps are larger camps, so you have your own cottage, and this is nice where it's nice and quiet.
Don has 4 cottages people can rent. He owns 3 of the 30 acres on this island. The Canadian government owns the rest. One of only 2 nearby neighbors, Bradley Bale, says everything went off the market in the 1950s.
Right after my father bought this island, the Canadian government decided to make Shoal Lake the sole source water supply for Winnipeg. So that put a moratorium on further development or sale of property in this part of the lake. And that's why you look around, you don't see other camps everywhere. The only other camp is the Hawkins, of course, the person that we bought this island from. And that's basically it.
Wow.
So it's like we got grandfathered into a national forest, basically.
That's one reason their world-class fishing and wildlife thrive. Woohoo! Oh, we got one. Oh, he's happy. Northern pike are big, plentiful, and delicious. They're Don's favorite to eat. He's perfected the difficult job of deboning pike. But the favorite to fish for in these waters is muskie. They're so popular here, a 40-foot statue of one is in this Kenora Park. Husky the muskie. Bradley saw his dad reel in this one right off their dock one morning.
Took him almost an hour to land the fish. It was so big and fought so hard. And he let me crank on it a little bit, which was fun. But it was fun to see him so excited.
To hook a muskie or most fish in these waters, Don uses lures. If he uses live bait, he'll go for leeches. But he's found lures are faster and more efficient.
A lot of big jerk baits and big bucktails, double bucktails. But at this time of the year, topwater plugs, large plugs, you know, with 3 hooks hanging out of them.
Yeah, some people have seen you and they said it looks like he's going shark fishing.
Yeah, I got a couple of my homemade ones that are a foot long.
When the cold Canadian winter sets in November, the entire 70 miles of lake will freeze up to 40 inches thick. So it's ice fishing then.
Certain times ice fishing can be extremely good because you're stationary, where in the summertime it's a little different, but you can have good fishing anytime on Lake of the Woods.
If you'd like a Canadian adventure of your own, Don is a great resource. You can get more information on his website, OntarioHuntingFishing.com. And now, let's go exploring for eagles. Back in the early 20th century, they were placed on the endangered species list. Now they are flourishing, a soaring symbol of the United States of America. You can find them in all 50 states and throughout Canada. Here on this uninhabited island lives a pair of bald eagles. Eagles mate for life unless that mate dies. Then they find another. They typically build their nests in secluded places like this one, away from people. They're territorial and keep other eagles out of their own nesting area, which is usually 1 to 2 square miles. I wanted to see what an eagle's nest looked like close up and what clues into its life lay beneath it. So I set out to explore Eagle Isle. Yet, I admit I was a bit nervous not knowing how the eagles would receive an unwelcome guest, or, more worrisome, what other creatures might be lurking on the island. I did have some security though, going with these two, my father and my husband. Or so I thought. This is a lot trickier than I thought. Once you get on the island, it's like, what tree is it in? I know that sounds silly, but it's hard to see the top of them from here. So we'll find it. I immediately found something wild. Blueberries. That's as wild as I want. It's a little creepy. Then I realized the only footsteps I hear are my own. I love how the guys stay back. So if there were a bear or a moose or something crazy, I think I'm on my own. These downed trees from a near tornado 2 summers ago make finding everything more difficult. Then I came across piles of sticks and branches. Aha, I must be under the nest. They definitely picked the biggest, strongest tree to build in. But then I see another nest. It's not uncommon for eagles to build more than one nest, and they did it here. So there's the lower one, which is a little safer, certainly in a storm or what have you. And then the other one is way up the top of that tree. Can't even see it, it's so high. Eagles often build their nests in the top quarter of the biggest tree around, and always near water, because the majority of their diet is fish. They start building where branches are thick and strong enough to support their heavy nests. In fact, some nests have weighed as much as 2 tons and can reach 9 feet in diameter, although most are half that size. They often use the same nest year after year. That's why you see all of these sticks on the ground. They are forever feathering their nests, making it larger and stronger, interweaving sticks and filling spaces with grass, moss, leaves, and other fibers. Then they use their own feathers on the interior to make it cozy for their cute eaglets. Okay, cute is stretching it, but they do grow up to be exquisite. Although from the looks of things, they don't have great table manners. They often eat in bed and throw their trash to the ground. Here are fish remains, some with big old teeth. And this is evidence they like red meat too. There's no telling what else I'd find under this mound of sticks and debris if I started digging. But since I'm flying solo underneath this nest and I don't have any real tools, this'll just have to be enough exploring on Eagle Isle for me, for now. And still ahead, Dr. Nick on critical thinking skills we all need to master and how to do it, as Weekends with Whitney continues.
Each morning in Baton Rouge, we rise to meet opportunity. We carry the weight of responsibility proudly. We choose our paths. We move fast and we fly high. We light the way for others to follow. We make it happen. But what really matters is what happens when we land at home. Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport. Fly easy.
There is criticism and there is critical thinking, and they're completely different. Dr. Nick joins us to explain why.
Don't you think? What would your gut say? What's criticism? If I'm always critical of you.
You're insulting.
Insulting, negating, complaining, seeing the dark side, seeing what you're not. Seeing what you're not instead of what you are. What critical thinking? Evaluating, weighing. We can't spend every moment of our day critical thinking on a decision because we'll go crazy.
Okay.
Some things are going to be automatic, like how we get to the store. I'm not going to sit around and think, well, is there a better way? Now, sometimes if the traffic's bad, we might get into critical thinking
Sure.
in terms of what might be my alternatives. That's critical thinking. Critical thinking is when we question, when we're curious enough to say how many sides or different perspectives are there to the issue. Critical thinking is trying to take the emotion out of it and looking at something objectively.
Can we do that?
Yes, we can. Let me give you just a couple of quick examples, or one just for the start. How many apps do we need? Don't you think that's a perfect question today for anyone, especially young people. How many apps do we need?
Right. Probably not the 40 on my phone.
Don't you think it would be critical thinking to sit back and say, I never use this app. Boop.
Right.
What am I holding on to it for? What do I want it for? It's just critical thinking. Or when I want to say something like, well, I think he's doing a great job, and that may be my emotion because I like him. And critical thinking would be looking at the data, looking at the facts, searching for what really is he doing instead of I just like him. Don't you think we need more of that in our national dialogue?
Oh, please.
Less emotion and more critical thinking. What about critical thinking of my own posture, my own stance, my own political leanings?
See, that's where I think critical thinking gets difficult when we have to examine ourselves.
Of course it does.
How objective can I be?
Of course it does. And that objectivity is just absolutely, to me, critical in being able to then move it to the next decision.
Okay. To action, really.
Action. Let's look at Baton Rouge.
Okay.
Critical thinking in terms of
the city as a whole.
Streets.
Oh, traffic.
The bridge to Lafayette. I don't know that we're ever going to be able to figure it out. But man, talk about something that needs critical thinking.
Sure.
And I'm not necessarily saying that
problem.
it needs another study.
There have been plenty of those. That's the data you were talking about. But then we have to move on to how are we really going to fix this?
Yeah, and decisions have to be made. But I just think with weighing things and looking at, again, possibilities, this is why I think people, remember the TED study that we talked about where the researcher was saying that the greatest factor of longevity is social interaction?
Yes.
And connecting with people? How does critical thinking come to be? When we are with people that are different, that express different views, but that themselves are not tied up in emotion, that are somewhat rational.
I like that. Thank you. I'm going to go forward this week and make sure I do some critical thinking on big things.
When it comes to making choices, don't you think you do, just real quick, don't you think you need to do critical thinking when you're asked to do all sorts of things? And the best thing to say is let me think about it.
You have given
me think about it.
24-hour
and then
rule.
you decide that's not the best place for me to spend that energy or that time, or I've got to get this done.
You're right.
It's now we're into, again, where am I putting the time? Where am I putting the energy? It's critical thinking.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that with this upcoming Saturday. I've got too many things on the plate. I'm never gonna do any of them well if I don't shave a few things off. So there you go.
And you can do that, by the way.
Right.
And you can do that without insulting people. You can just say, I overloaded the plate. I'm sorry. But do it soon. I don't know that I'd wait till Friday.
That's right. That's important. Don't. Because sometimes unpleasant things, disappointing things,
right.
I drag my feet on. So
that's right.
I'm not going to do that.
That's good.
They'll find someone
else.
else.
That's good, Whitney, because that's also critical thinking. In that, I can do this.
Great.
I can do this.
Thanks, Dr. Nick.
Just don't criticize.
Yeah.
Critical thinking is different.
Thanks so much for that reminder. More Weekends with Whitney after this. Atlas Foundation Repair. Fixing your foundation problems for more than 30 years while preserving and protecting your trees. Thanks for joining us for Weekends with Whitney. We hope to see you back here again next week. Until then, we leave you with this.